So friends, now we will try to understand a very important concept, Ohm's law, that is very oftenly applied in different circuit situations. Before we actually come to the statement and application of Ohm's law, I wanted to clear certain notions. One is about conventional current and the other is positive and negative pole in an electric circuit. Conventional current by definition is taken as from positive to negative pole of any electrical circuit. So even if we have both the type of charges, like in ionic conduction we have cation and anion, both are moving, or we may have a situation in which only positive is moving, or we may have a situation which is very commonly seen in metallic conduction where we have only electrons moving. But irrespective of the charge which is flowing, positive or negative or both, the direction of the current in a circuit is always taken as from positive to negative. And here the positive and negative means the positive pole and the negative pole of the source which is supplying the energy or which is maintaining the potential difference in this circuit. So now what is this positive and negative pole? As per the electrostatic force, even if we have a single positive pole, we will be having electrostatic force and these electrons or these charges would move. So then what is the need of having another pole? If a collection or a set of charge of similar type is good enough to store a electrical potential energy, and that energy would automatically allow these charge carriers or charges to move apart and to lose their potential energy. But the point is, if you have a set of charge like this, it can be positive, this can be negative collection of charges, and this is against the natural tendency of the charges. So we know that these charges are going to be held by some external agency, which means there is some work done and there is some energy stored in it. But if let free, these will have divergence or they will try to move apart. However, there won't be any direction. They will try to move in all possible directions. Here is the role of two poles. If we have this as one pole, this as another pole, the movement of such charges now would become direction specific, and now the direction would be from positive to negative. Charges would flow from both the sides. Negative would flow to positive side and positive would flow to negative side. However, conventionally we would say that there is a current which is flowing from positive to negative. So two poles in a circuit or two poles in a situation or in a system of charges will make the charge flow in a direction which is by convention for the electric current is given by positive to negative. And whenever we refer to a current which is flowing from positive to negative pole of the source, we refer to it as a conventional current. Another important point to understand here is this positive and negative pole may or may not mean that here we have collection of lot of positive charge and here we have collection of lot of negative charge. This might be a situation, this might not be a situation. There may be a situation in which you will have two poles, one at higher potential energy than the other. And in such a case also we say the lower potential energy pole is the negative pole and higher potential energy pole is the positive pole. So basically this is to give direction to the circuit and to understand that from where to where current is flowing, and the definition of the current or the definition of the movement to flow, the condition of the charge to flow is not from positive to negative or from negative to positive or from positive to positive or negative to negative. It is basically from higher potential energy to lower potential. That is a more fundamental description to explain any charge carrier's spontaneous movement. So here we may write positive and 0, we may write negative and more negative, we may write positive and less positive. All those would mean same. Suppose we have +9 and plus 5. So this is higher potential, this is lower potential. We may have a situation where it is minus 9, it is minus 11. So this is lower potential because it is a negative value, and this is higher potential. We may have 7 or 0. So again this is higher to lower. So the current, conventional current would flow from 7 to 0, or from minus 9 to minus 11, or from plus 9 to plus 5. So this is by default, unless specified in a circuit. We need to remember this thing, that we are always referring to number one, a conventional current. Number two, we have the potential difference, and the potential difference is, though it is cited, though it is written, or it is described in terms of positive or negative, mainly it is the positive potential is at higher potential energy, and negative pole is at lesser potential energy. Another important thing which might be considered while describing and explaining the electrical circuits is, unless specified, normally we refer to as metallic current. Unless you see a electrolytic solution or some body tissue or an electrode which is having electrolytic material. So unless specified, or unless it is clear with the circuit that we have a situation in which we might find some electrolyte, it is normally metallic current that we are referring to in the circuit. And when we say metallic current, it is the charge carrier is electrons. But now onwards we will try to explain as if protons are moving. That will make it more in sync with the direction of the conventional current, though there won't be anything moving from this place to this place, because you know that the electrons are here, negativity is here as per the positive and negative pole, and the electron should flow from here to here, but the conventional current would flow from here to here. So in a circuit, we'll try to now assume that as if a positive charge carrier or a positive charge is moving, and this is the direction which goes in tune with the direction of the conventional current. So now when we know that how charges are moving and what are the conditions or what are the preconditions under which they move, what is their possible direction in which they move, we need to understand more about the dynamics of a circuit in which a current is flowing. And to explain the features of current which is flowing in this circuit, there is a law referred to as the Ohm's law, which states that current flowing through a conductor, suppose this is a conductor, so the current flowing through this conductor is directly proportional to the potential difference that is applied across it, which means the current is directly proportional to the potential difference or voltage across it. If we convert it into an equation, we will say that it is V I is equal to V by R, where resistance R is a constant for a particular physical conditions like temperature and all. If they are constant, the resistance is a constant feature of this material. Now what is this resistance? This resistance is a tendency of the conductor to resist the flow of current or flow of charge through it from higher potential to lower potential. This resistance has got certain features. This resistance is material specific, number one. Then it is specific to physical conditions, mainly temperature. So if we change the temperature, the resistance of this conductor is going to change. It will take a different value. This resistance is also dependent upon the shape, that means mainly the length and cross-sectional area, that is this area of this conductor. So there are many features. If they remain constant, the resistance for a conductor would remain constant. So which means in a circuit we may have a constant resistance, but for a material it is not going to be constant, because the material can take any shape, any length, any area. The material can be put under different temperature circumstances. So for a material we should have a more fundamental constant, and that is resistance. It is material specific, and if multiplied by the dimensions of the conductor, now this becomes your resistance. So this is a very oftenly applied concept in metallic conduction, and otherwise also it is very commonly used and applied in several circuits. So the concept of resistance or the equation or the mathematical or empirical formula of resistance is very important to understand, and it has many applications as we will be unfolding the different circuits and their applications. So in general, we may say that if we are given a circuit, if we have a conductor, a resistance is a constant factor for this conductor, and this is the value by which the current which is passing through this conductor will be impeded or will be resisted to flow through it. So now if we again write it in a different empirical way, we write down that V is equal to IR. That means the voltage that is applied across a conductor can also be calculated in a circuit for a current that is flowing through the circuit and the resistance of the conductor through which it is flowing. Now the resistance offered by a conductor is dissipative in nature. Now what is dissipative? Dissipative feature is when we have a form of energy, and if that form of energy is converted into some another form of energy in a system, then we say that that initial energy is being dissipated into some other energy, and from there it has come that the resistance is dissipative in nature because it converts the electrical potential energy into some other form of energy, and it has got many applications also, especially the heating or the joules heating by the conductors based upon this dissipative nature of the resistance. Now let us understand actually from where this resistance is coming, how does it occurring, and what are the factors on which it will depend, and what are the situations in which it can be more or less. So we take two examples. One is of metallic conduction, where you have a wire and it has a length, it has a cross-sectional area, you have electrons that are moving, though they do not move in such a linear fashion, but for the sake of simplicity I am drawing. And if you further analyze this, metal is a crystalline structure, so you have a crystal which has got this kind of arrangement, and on the vertices you have the atoms of the metal, and the electrons are allowed to move in this mesh work of metal crystal, and they move such that the net movement or the net drift of the charge is from this place to this place or in this direction, and we assume that this is the direction of electron, so the conventional current is in this direction. Now think of another situation where you have a electrolyte and it is again provided with two poles, and you have sodium cations, you have chloride anions, you have a lot of anions and cations, and they are moving towards their respective poles. So positive cation will move towards the cathode and the anion will move towards the anode. So this is your cathode and these are your cations, and the anions will move towards the anode. So now when under influence of electrical potential, in this case also, this is the point of higher potential, this is the point of lower potential, this is the point of higher potential because the conventional current is going here, so this is the point of higher potential and this is the point of lower potential. This is the direction of the current and this is the direction of the electrons. So in both of these situations you have some more atoms or molecules or species that either they are moving, they are also moving, like in this case you have two opposite movements, cations and anions are moving in opposite movements, and in addition you may have some more molecules or atoms that are there in this solvent or solution, or those which are not moving. Same way here you have all these vertices which are having heavier atoms of the metal, but they are not moving. However, they will have every chance to collide with these rampantly moving electrons. So in this process, then these collisions are occurring maybe here also or here also. The electron which was moving with a very fast velocity will lose some of its energy, and that energy will never come back to this electronic system. It will be retained by, a part of it will be retained by these atoms, and it will raise the vibrational energy of these atoms or this crystal lattice, which is a measure of temperature of this crystal. You know that the vibrational kinetic energy of the fixed atoms by which they oscillate through a mean position is a measure of the temperature of that substance or that material or of that metallic crystal. So in summary, we can say that some part of the energy is drifted forward to another electron, which is drifted forward to another electron, and so on, but a very small part of the energy would be given through these collisions to the atoms of these metal, and same in this case, some part of energy will be given forward and forward to anions, to anions, to anions, to anions, or cations, to cations, to cations, to cations, until they reach to their poles. However, some part of the energy will be given to the atoms or molecules that are not constituting any current, but still they are having a lot of random motion, and these atoms or these molecules which absorb this energy and increase their random motions constitute the rise in temperature of this electrolyte. So in both the cases, we can see that some part of the energy is wasted, and this is the basic concept of resistance. And this is the concept we say that it is dissipative in nature. We gave electrical potential. Here also we gave electrical potential, and now we have converted the electrical potential energy into heat energy. So this is, in this whole system, if we look for our electrical potential energy, we will find it nowhere, or we will find it lesser. So where is that difference, or where is that total potential energy of electrical nature has gone? It is being converted into some other form of energy, and we call it the heat energy. So this is why we say that resistance is dissipative, and resistance will always be there as long as the current is flowing. Current may flow in this direction, current may flow in this direction, current may oscillate in this direction and this direction, like in AC current. As long as movements are there, collisions are bound to happen. As long as movement is there, collisions are bound to happen, and for each and every collision, we will be having a part of energy that will be dissipated into the heat or into the kinetic energy that is imparted to the larger, bigger, and other non-contributory molecules or atoms of this material or this material, which are available in the material, but they are not constituting any current. So they are just absorbing the energy, and they are changing one form of energy into the other form of energy. One more important concept that we can deduce from our Ohm's law, that was V is equal to IR, is that because now we assume that the resistance is going to be constant in a particular circuit. So in such a circuit, if we increase the voltage or the potential difference, the current in that circuit would increase. So if we plot a graph, we will find a linear graph, and the slope of that would be the resistance offered in that circuit. Now we know that resistance is constant, so you can find that for a linear graph the slope is constant, and that is this value. So we say that as per Ohm's law, V and I, the current and voltage applied, bear a linear relation, but that is actually true for metallic conduction only. If we have an electrolytic conduction, or if we have semiconductors where we have electronic p-n junction diodes and other such devices, so in such cases this linearity is not there, though in qualitative description we would say that there exists some relation between V and I, and that is directly proportional, but that is not linear in the case of electrolytic conduction, and it is very much linear in case of metallic conduction. So the true ohmic circuits are the circuits where we have metallic conductions, and on the basis of this, sometimes we say that the battery or the electrolytic conductions are non-ohmic, or the devices that are based on electrolytic conduction or the components that are based on electrolytic conductions are non-ohmic devices or non-ohmic circuits, because there is no linearity between the value of V and I, potential difference. And having understood the concept of resistance, especially in context of metallic conduction, we can draw a very interesting analogy between its mechanical counterpart, and we find that the mechanical counterpart or mechanical analogous to electrical resistance is friction that there is between two surfaces if they have a relative motion. We know that if we have two surfaces or two bodies and they have a relative motion, maybe this is moving in this direction, this is moving in this direction, or this is stationary, this is only moving, or this is moving in this direction but this is moving with a lesser velocity, or maybe this is moving in this direction but this is also moving with a lesser velocity. So we may have many circumstances in which we can find there is a relative motion between the two surfaces, and as long as we have relative movement or relative motion between two surfaces, there is a frictional force that is exerted between the two surfaces, and that is again a dissipative force, because that friction increase the kinetic energy of the surface and it heats up the surfaces. A very common phenomenon that we find when we run on a treadmill or a tire or a wheel of a car, or the tire of the car gets heated after some distance of running. So all these things are based upon the friction, and same way here you find, as long as the current is, doesn't matter current is moving in this direction or it is moving in this direction, or it is changing its direction every time after a complete cycle, like in case of AC. Anytime current moves, you will have dissipation of energy, and that dissipation is the resistance, and that dissipation is going to be opposite to the current's flow, and that dissipation is going to convert the electrical energy into heat energy. Here also, anytime there is a friction, the friction will always oppose a relative motion. The friction will change the mechanical energy into heat energy. So this is also dissipative in nature, and we can say that in electrical circuits, resistance is what friction is in the mechanical situations or contexts. Now, certain points I mention whenever I give these concepts or discuss these concepts. Number one is from the definition of Ohm's law itself, that the concept of resistance, or in general we can say that the Ohm's law, the concept of Ohm's law is in picture when we have current flowing. If we go back to the definition, it says that the current flowing, the first thing is the current flowing is directly proportional to the potential difference applied across the conductor. So we need current first. If there is an open circuit like this, there is no meaning applying actually the Ohm's law, though we may deduce directly or indirectly that the resistance, there is a resistance here, because you said that any matter would be having some resistance, so we say the resistance is highest, so this way we prove that the current is zero. So that is one thing we can do, but actually and technically speaking, unless we have current flowing, we may not be able to actually apply the implications of Ohm's law in a circuit. So it should be a closed circuit in which we can apply the Ohm's law. Number two is that Ohm's law is more applicable, linearly applicable in the cases where we have metallic conduction. So that is second takeaway. Third takeaway is we need to ensure that the resistance, that is resistivity, length and area of the conductor remains constant, and for this we need to maintain the temperature also. So if we say that the resistance is constant, the physical conditions, physical structure of the material should not change. So these are the certain points we need to mention, we need to always keep in mind, because sometimes we get confused if we apply Ohm's law, but actually that is not a situation in which the Ohm's law can be applied. Then going further in this discussion, I can say, though we will be coming later to it, that Ohm's law is not applicable in case of capacitors. That we will be doing in details later, but here I need to mention that if you have a capacitor, please don't try to apply Ohm's law across it, or if it is a part of a circuit. So now you have a battery, you have a resistance, and then you have a capacitor. So in such a circuit, it is not advisable all the time to apply Ohm's law, because such a circuit will have a different characteristic which we will be doing in details later. Similarly, we have again a special device like inductor. So again, if you have an inductance in any circuit, we may have a battery also, we may have a resistance also, we may have a capacitor also. So now this is an even more complicated situation. So in such situations, because these are the devices which do not behave actually as per the Ohm's law. The reason is because in such devices we do not have only electrical potential energy, we have some more concepts which we will be doing once we understand what actually is an inductance or it is a capacitance. So the takeaway is we need to see whether Ohm's law is applicable or not in a circuit, and for that we need to see whether the current is flowing, number one, whether the resistance is constant, number two, or otherwise we will have to account for this thing, and we have to see whether it is a metallic conduction, so that we can apply the linearity of the empirical formula. And then we have to see, do we have some special devices, maybe we can have a PN junction diode. So if we have a PN junction diode, or if we have a transistor, which we draw it like this, the collector, the emitter. So if we have all such special devices, as I mentioned in initial discussion only, that these are the devices which are non-ohmic. So if we have any non-ohmic device, it is not advisable to apply purely Ohm's law. Maybe in combination we can apply, but purely it is not advisable to apply Ohm's law in such situations.